Hello and welcome to the Death Row and Executions channel. My name is Paco Rivera. You can also follow me on Facebook for updates and more Death Row news. There will be a link to my Facebook in the description below. Also, check out my other channel here on YouTube called The Maximum Sentence, where I cover recent crimes and convictions. There will also be a link for that. Before I discuss the next upcoming scheduled execution to take place, I want to briefly talk about another death row story that I haven't mentioned yet in any of my videos. A few episodes ago, I did a presentation on Tremaine Wood, who was scheduled to be executed on November 13th of this year. During that video, I explained the law of parties, sometimes also known as the felony murder rule, or guilty by association, or culpability. It is the law in most states and other countries, as I saw in comments on that video. I gave that explanation because there were so many people all up in arms wondering why Tremaine Wood was sentenced to death when he wasn't the actual killer. Well, these are people that believe he wasn't the killer. The evidence did prove otherwise. But I want to mention a death row case that you might find interesting. This man you see here is Florida death row inmate Mark Sievers. In December of 2019, Sievers was found guilty for the murder of his wife, Tressa Sievers, in Bonita Springs, Florida. And a month later, in January of now the year 2020, he was sentenced to death. Now, you should know that Mark Sievers did not kill his wife. As a matter of fact, he was not even in Florida when Tressa was killed. He was almost 1,400 miles away in the state of Connecticut. Mark Sievers had hired a man named Curtis Wayne Wright Jr., who also happened to be his best friend, living in Missouri, to kill Tressa. He hired Curtis Wainwright to kill Tressa. Wright and another man named Jimmy Rogers drove from Missouri to Bonita Springs, Florida, and killed Sievers' wife. By the time the investigation was concluded and these cases went to trial, Curtis Wright was sentenced to 25 years after agreeing to a plea deal. Jimmy Rogers was sentenced to life in jail. If it matters to anybody, Rogers was the actual killer. And Mark Sievers, the mastermind of the murder-for-hire plot, was sentenced to death. Yes, even though he was 1,400 miles away when the murder happened, he was sentenced to death. Sievers doesn't have an execution date set yet. It's too soon, and he is still working on appeals. But I'll be covering this case in detail when he is scheduled. And I can tell you now that this is one very crazy and complicated case. There have been quite a few true crime show documentaries that have covered it. 48 Hours did 2 episodes on this case. And as I said, I will also be doing a detailed presentation when and if Mr. Mark Sievers is scheduled for an execution. Now, let's talk about the upcoming execution to take place this year. On the morning of February 1st, 1989, 8-year-old Bart Pettibone said bye to his mom and went to school. When he arrived home from school later that afternoon and entered the house, he discovered his mom dead on the kitchen floor. The medical examiner would later determine that Tressa Lynn Pettibone had abrasions on her head, face, chest, and abdomen caused by blunt force trauma. She also had suffered several fatal stab wounds. The bloody knife was found in the kitchen sink. Plastic tie wraps were found on her wrists, and the ME had concluded that Tressa's wrists had been bound with those plastic tie wraps for at least 20 minutes before she was killed. How forensic scientists know these things is something I can't explain. Anyway, an older daughter of the victim, Blythe Pettibone, had said that jewelry was missing from the home, as well as a pair of Gucci sunglasses. The victim's husband, Kevin Pettibone, stated that his wife's Mercedes-Benz was not there. That car was later found in the parking lot of a school nearby. However, apparently, whoever killed Tressa and robbed the home was unaware of $7,000 in cash that was hidden in the house, because that was not taken. Crime scene technicians processed the scene, and one of the things that they found were fresh shoe prints on the floor that were later identified as having come from a pair of Nikes, something to keep in mind. Investigators began to develop leads when the children were questioned. Young Bart had said that about a week earlier, a man named Mark Geralds, who was a carpenter and had done work in the Pettibones' home, happened to be at the shopping mall while Bart was there with his mom, while Bart was playing video games at an arcade. As it turns out, Tressa's husband, Kevin, had been out of town on a business trip, and Geralds came up to Bart in the arcade and asked him, when does his dad return from his trip? When will he be back home? And Bart told him. And then Geralds asked Bart, at what time does he and his sister leave for school in the morning, and what time do they normally get back home? Now, all these questions might have seemed innocent to young Bart, since the man had done work in their home, and it all may have seemed like part of a friendly conversation. But when investigators heard about this from Bart, it surely raised some eyebrows. And then investigators got another break. They had a list of jewelry from the home with an exact description of each piece that was stolen. Well, they went around checking pawn shops and practically hit the lottery when they spotted a gold chain necklace from their list. And they learned that the necklace had been pawned by none other than Mark Geralds, who, by the way, was 22 years old at the time. That gold necklace was pawned about 2 o'clock in the afternoon on February 1st, the same day as the murder and robbery. That necklace was taken to a lab and forensically examined, and lab technicians found barely visible traces of blood on the necklace. Well, this was in the days before DNA was readily available. DNA results would take about a year back then. But they did determine that the blood on the necklace was of the same type as the victim, Tressa Pettibone, type A blood. And it was a different type of blood that Mark Geralds has. When investigators questioned friends of Mark Geralds, they learned from a woman named Vicky Ward that Geralds had given her, as a gift, a pair of Gucci sunglasses. They were, in fact, the sunglasses stolen from the Pettibones' home. Following a search of Gerald's car, according to some reports, Mark Gerald was homeless and living in his car. During a search, investigators took into evidence a pair of Nike shoes that a lab later positively identified as the footwear that left shoe prints at the crime scene. Also in Gerald's car, they found plastic tie wraps that were an exact match to the ones used to bound the wrists of the victim. Thank God these criminals are so stupid leaving all these things around. Case closed. Who needs DNA when you have all this? I do see that a true crime series called Body of Evidence, produced by the Court TV network, did a story on this case way back in the year 2003. But I was unable to find any streaming networks that are now showing that episode. Mark Geralds is set to be the 18th execution in Florida this year. Unfortunately, I don't have much information on the life of the victim, Tressa Pettibone, to offer a tribute to her memory. What I know from a bit of her obituary is that she was born in Ohio before settling in Panama City Beach, Florida. Tressa was just 33 years old and a mom of 2 children. Sadly, one of those children, Tressa's son Bart, who was the 8-year-old boy that discovered her body on the kitchen floor, who would later marry and have 3 children of his own, has gone to join his mom when he passed away in May of the year 2022 at the age of 41, while still residing in Panama Beach, Florida. I was unable to find a cause of death for Bart Pettibone. A GoFundMe account set up for the family regarding his death only states, Bart's sudden and unexpected passing has shocked his family and friends. Please go ahead and hit the subscribe button for more death row and upcoming execution stories so that you're alerted when the next one comes out. You can also follow me on Facebook for updates. There will be a link to my Facebook in the description below. My name is Paco Rivera. Thank you for watching. Take care and bye for now.